The little girl's voice trembled in the quiet house. Her tiny hands clutched the hem of her dress, eyes wide with fear. "Please, don't hurt us," she whispered, her tears glistening in the dim light. She wasn't begging for herself. She was protecting her mother, standing bravely between danger and the only family she had. But in that moment, everything changed. A heavy door creaked open, footsteps echoed against marble floors, and the room fell into silence. The air thickened as the presence of a man with power, wealth, and authority filled the house. He wasn't just a father. He wasn't just a husband. He was a man who built empires, who commanded respect everywhere he went. And yet tonight, his heart shattered at the sight before him. The world would soon learn that no amount of money could protect a family from fear. But love could turn the tide. This is not just a story of wealth and danger. It's about a father's fight, a child's courage, and the kind of strength money can never buy. The night was too quiet for a city mansion. Outside, the world still buzzed with cars, distant sirens, and laughter of people heading home after a long day. But inside, behind those towering iron gates and the polished marble walls, silence pressed down like a heavy weight. A little girl sat on the living room rug, her stuffed bunny clutched tight to her chest. She was only 7, but her wide brown eyes held something no child should ever know: fear. The shadows on the walls stretched and bent, making her believe monsters were hiding in every corner. Except tonight, the monster wasn't imaginary. The front door had been forced open earlier, and 2 strangers now lingered in her home. Their boots marked the expensive flooring. Their rough voices clashed against the luxury of the house. They weren't supposed to be here. And she knew, even without understanding the full danger, that she and her mother were in trouble. Her mother tried to act calm, holding her close, whispering words of comfort into her ear. But the tremble in her mother's voice betrayed her. The men weren't interested in toys or laughter or the beauty of the mansion. They wanted something far greater, something her father owned, something worth millions. The taller of the 2 men leaned closer, his shadow looming over the child. "Don't cry," he sneered, but his tone was anything but kind. "We just want what belongs to your daddy." The little girl's lips quivered and a sob escaped before she could stop it. Her small voice, shaky yet desperate, filled the room. "Please, don't hurt us." The men exchanged a glance, amused at her words, but neither softened. They didn't understand the weight of a child's plea. To them, this was business. To her, it was survival. The chandelier above flickered as if the house itself sensed the fear. Every second stretched. Every sound grew louder. The thud of boots, the uneven breath of her mother, the pounding of her own little heart. One man reached for her arm, and she shrank back, clinging to her mother's waist. Her mother pulled her close, shielding her with all the strength she had. It was a mother's instinct, to fight with nothing but love as her weapon. But just as the man took another step forward, a sound broke through the silence, the low, commanding creak of a heavy oak door. The girl froze, her tears still clinging to her lashes. The men stiffened, their eyes darting toward the grand hallway. A figure appeared, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence alone shifting the air. His suit was sharp, his tie loosened, his face still weary from a long day of boardrooms and deals. But when his eyes fell on his daughter, his little angel with tear-streaked cheeks, his entire world narrowed to one thing: protect. The men had come for money, for power, for leverage, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had entered the home of a millionaire who would burn his entire empire to ashes before letting anyone harm his child. And in that heartbeat, the quiet mansion was no longer silent. It was charged, alive, ready to erupt into something the intruders never expected. The men froze as the figure of the millionaire father stepped into the living room. His shoes clicked, steadily on the marble floor, each step echoing like a warning bell. He didn't rush, but his presence was enough to make the intruders shift uneasily. His eyes, sharp and cold as steel, never left the 2 men. "Step away from them," he said, his voice deep, controlled, and dangerous. It wasn't a request. It was a command. The little girl's breath caught in her throat. She clung tighter to her mother, whispering through her sobs, "Daddy." Her father's gaze flickered briefly, softening when it landed on her, but only for a moment. Behind that softness was a storm building. He had been in countless boardrooms, across countless negotiations where billions were at stake, but never had he felt a weight as heavy as the sight of his child trembling in fear. The taller man, emboldened by his partner's presence, sneered. "You're late, boss man. We were just having a little talk with your family." His tone dripped with mockery, but his eyes betrayed the nervous twitch of someone who had just realized he'd chosen the wrong house. The father stepped closer, his suit jacket shifting slightly to reveal the faint outline of something at his waist. It was unclear whether it was a weapon, but the hint was enough. The shorter intruder's confidence faltered. "You want money?" the father said, his tone steady. "That's all this is, right?" The men exchanged a look, caught off guard by his calmness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tossing it on the table. "Name the amount. I'll have it wired. But you leave them out of this, now." The taller man laughed, though his voice cracked at the edges. "It's not that simple. Your competitors pay a fortune to see you suffer. We're just the messengers." The father's jaw tightened. He wasn't afraid. He was calculating. His entire career had been built on reading people, finding their weakness, and striking where it hurt. And right now, he could see the cracks forming in these intruders' confidence. "You've already made your mistake," he said, his voice lowering, more dangerous now. "You touched my family. That means you've already lost." The words hung heavy in the air, cutting deeper than any threat. The little girl, still nestled against her mother, peeked up at her father. She had never seen him like this, towering, unshakable, like a wall no one could break. Her tiny fingers loosened on the stuffed bunny as she dared to believe he could really make the monsters disappear. The taller intruder, trying to regain control, pulled a knife from his pocket, holding it up as though it could shift the balance back in his favor. "Careful with your mouth. You're not the one in control here." But even as the blade caught the light, the father's expression didn't change. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a whisper that carried more power than any shout. "Put that down before I make you regret ever walking through my door." For a moment, silence blanketed the room again. The men weren't used to this. They were used to people begging, crying, breaking down under pressure. But this man wasn't begging. He was daring them to try. The shorter intruder shifted uneasily, glancing at the girl's tear-streaked face. His hands twitched, restless. "Maybe we should just," he started, but the taller one cut him off with a glare. The father's eyes flicked to that hesitation, noting the weakness. He could see it, the uncertainty, the doubt, and he knew he could use it. "You don't want to be here," the father said, his gaze locking on the weaker one. "You don't want to scar a child for the rest of her life. Walk out now, and I'll make sure no one ever hears your name." The man swallowed hard, his grip faltering. His partner snarled, frustrated, but the balance had already begun to shift. The mansion, once a cage of fear, was now tilting into the father's control. The little girl felt it too. She pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, whispering again, softer this time, "Daddy's here." And in those 3 words, she believed safety was possible again. But the danger wasn't over. Not yet. The knife glimmered still. The taller intruder's pride was wounded, and wounded pride could be the most dangerous weapon of all. The father braced himself. The confrontation had just begun. The room pulsed with tension. Every second stretched so thin it felt like the air itself might shatter. The taller intruder gripped his knife tighter, his knuckles white, his pride unwilling to surrender. The shorter one shifted, torn between loyalty and fear, his eyes darting nervously between his partner and the man standing unshaken before them. The father moved forward slowly, every step deliberate, his gaze never breaking. "You're standing in my home," he said, his voice calm but razor-sharp, "threatening my wife and child. Do you really think you'll walk out of here?" The taller man forced a smirk, though his confidence was unraveling. "You think money and a suit make you untouchable? Not tonight." He lunged forward, knife flashing under the chandelier light. Time seemed to slow. The little girl gasped, burying her face against her mother's chest. Her mother tightened her arms around her, bracing for the worst. But the father was faster. With the reflexes of a man who had fought his way through life's cruelties, he sidestepped, grabbing the intruder's wrist with a strength that came not from wealth, but from desperation to protect what mattered most. The knife clattered too, the marble floor, its sharp clang echoing like a victory bell. The taller intruder cursed, swinging wildly with his free hand, but the father countered, slamming him against the wall with a force that left no room for retaliation. The shorter intruder froze, his chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes wide with realization. He wasn't prepared for this. He had thought it would be easy, just another rich man too soft to fight back. But this wasn't just a man of wealth. This was a father defending his family, and that was something money could never measure. "Get out," the father growled at him, his grip still iron on the taller man's arm. "Take your partner and leave before I make sure you never step into another home again." The shorter man hesitated, torn between fleeing and helping his friend. But the look in the father's eyes, the raw, unbreakable fire, made the choice for him. He backed away, muttering curses under his breath, before bolting through the front door. The taller intruder thrashed, desperate, but it was useless. The father leaned close, his voice low, dangerous, final. "You made the mistake of touching my family. That mistake will haunt you forever." Then, with one swift motion, he shoved the man toward the doorway. The intruder stumbled, clutching his injured wrist, and staggered out into the night. The sound of the heavy door slamming shut behind him reverberated through the house, sealing the chaos outside. Silence returned. But this silence was different. No longer heavy with fear. It was a silence of safety, of relief, of love restored. The father turned, his chest heaving. His eyes softened the moment they landed on his daughter, still trembling in her mother's embrace. He dropped to his knees, arms open, voice breaking now with emotion. "Come here, sweetheart." The little girl ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tightly, closing his eyes as if memorizing the feeling of her heartbeat against his. His wife joined them, wrapping her arms around both, the three of them bound together in a fragile yet unshakable circle of love. For the first time that night, the father let his tears fall, not from fear, but from gratitude. Gratitude that his daughter was safe, that his wife was unharmed, that the family he had built was still whole. The little girl pulled back just enough to look at him, her cheeks wet, her voice small but steady. "Daddy, I knew you'd come." He kissed her forehead, his voice husky. "Always. Nothing in this world could ever keep me from you." The chandelier above glowed warmly now, casting a golden light over them as if the house itself was sighing in relief. The shadows that had haunted the walls were gone. The father rose, one arm still holding his daughter, the other wrapped protectively around his wife. He glanced toward the door where the intruders had fled and whispered to himself, a vow etched in his heart. "No one will ever hurt us again." And as he led his family upstairs, the little girl clinging safely to his side, the world outside could keep its greed, its rivalry, its threats. Inside this home, love was the empire, and it was unbreakable. The story closes on the father's vow, the family's embrace, and the symbolic image of light replacing shadows, showing that wealth doesn't define strength, but love does.